Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into something really fascinating and honestly incredibly popular: solfeggio frequencies. If you've spent any time looking at wellness stuff online, maybe browsing Spotify, YouTube, you've probably seen these. We're talking millions, tens of millions of plays. It's huge. Sits right at that crossroads of sound, belief, and, well, science.
Exactly. And that's pretty much our mission today, to help you navigate that intersection. Because on one hand, you've got these really extraordinary claims: healing, transformation, ancient wisdom. And on the other, you have the hard look of scientific scrutiny and historical facts. So we're going to take this stack of sources we've gathered, articles, some research notes, and really unpack it for you, give you a nuanced view, separating the stories from the evidence.
Okay, let's dive in then. What exactly are solfeggio frequencies? Can we define them? Proponents say they're a specific set, right? 9 pure tones, starting low at 174 hertz, going way up to 963 hertz. And the core idea, the main claim, is that each one has this unique vibrational signature, that it interacts with your body, your mind, promotes well-being physically, emotionally, spiritually. It's like a vibrational pharmacy. What kind of things are they prescribing?
Well, it's quite the list, isn't it? And it's all wrapped in this narrative of being ancient, sacred sounds that were somehow lost and now, rediscovered. Take 174 hertz, for instance. That one's often called the natural anesthetic, supposedly for physical pain, back, leg, foot pain, inflammation, muscle relaxation, even emotional stress relief. Gives a sense of security, love.
And then 285 hertz. The claims get pretty specific.
They do. 285 hertz is linked to quantum cognition and tissue restoration. So healing cuts, burns, maybe even restructuring damaged organs, boosting the immune system. Emotional balance, too.
Okay, and as you go up the scale, the claims seem to get even bigger, like more spiritual.
Precisely. 396 hertz is the liberation frequency. Focus there is on cleansing guilt and fear, turning grief into joy, removing subconscious negative beliefs, grounding you spiritually. Then 417 hertz, the frequency of change. This one's supposed to wipe out negativity, clear negative thoughts, heal trauma, remove bad energy from your body or even your environment, and motivate change.
And then we hit the really famous one, 528 hertz, the love frequency or miracle tone. This is the one you hear about most, I think. What's the big claim there?
That's the one most famously linked to DNA repair, also increased energy, reducing stress hormones like cortisol, increasing feelings of love, better concentration. It's sort of the superstar of the set.
Wow, DNA repair from a sound wave. That's a massive claim. Okay, what else is on this vibrational pharmacy shelf?
Keep going up. You get 639 hertz, the relationship frequency. Claims there are about enhancing communication, understanding, tolerance, love, healing strained relationships. Then 741 hertz, the cleansing frequency. This one supposedly cleanses cells of toxins, viruses, bacteria, detoxifies from electromagnetic radiation, promotes self-expression, mental clarity, problem solving.
Okay, so it's covering physical, emotional, relational, even environmental detox.
Pretty much. And then the highest ones get even more esoteric. 852 hertz is the frequency of spiritual order, meant to help you see reality beyond illusions, awaken intuition, connect to your higher self, enable cells to transform to a higher energy level. And finally, 963 hertz, called the God frequency or divine consciousness. Claims here are activating the pineal gland, connecting to the cosmos, divine consciousness, awakening systems to their perfect state, sense of oneness.
So listening to all that, it really does sound almost too good to be true, doesn't it? Like a cure-all delivered through your headphones. My first thought is, if this works like that, why isn't it everywhere? In hospitals? These are just vast claims. Which naturally leads us to the big question. Where did this system actually come from? Because the story most people hear might not be the real origin story.
Is a captivating story they tell, absolutely. And you're right to ask about the origins.
Yeah.
Because the solfeggio system, the one we know today with these specific frequencies and claims, it's actually quite modern, came about in the 1970s.
Right, because the narrative you often hear is very different. Ancient sounds, Gregorian chants, lost wisdom rediscovered. That's the hook.
It's a powerful hook, no doubt. But the person credited with this rediscovery is Dr. Joseph Puleo. He was a naturopathic physician, and he claimed he found these frequencies, well, not in ancient musical scores or anything like that. It was through a specific kind of biblical interpretation. He applied something he called the Pythagorean method of number reduction, basically, numerology, to the book of Numbers in the Old Testament, chapter 7, verses 12 to 83 specifically.
Numerology on the Bible to get sound frequencies.
Exactly. And through that process, he derived the first 6 frequencies: 396, 417, 528, 639, 741, and 852 hertz. Interestingly, the other 3, 174, 285, and 963 hertz, those were actually added later by others who built on his work.
Okay, so Puleo starts it in the 70s with numerology. Then how did it get so popular?
That's largely thanks to Dr. Leonard G. Horowitz. He's a public health expert and author. He collaborated with Puleo. Their book in 1999, Healing Codes for the Biological Apocalypse, that was really key. It codified those healing attributes for each tone, and it's where the famous link between 528 Hz and DNA repair really got cemented. It's worth mentioning the book itself kind of blends these healing ideas with some pretty strong conspiratorial and, well, apocalyptic themes.
Right. And proponents often point to mathematical patterns too, don't they? Like the numbers adding up.
Yes, exactly. They highlight the numerology, specifically the digital root, where you add the digits of a number until you get a single digit.
Right.
For those original 6 frequencies Puleo derived, the digital root always turns out to be 3, 6, or 9. Take 528 Hz. 5 plus 2 plus 8 is 15. Then 1 plus 5 is 6. And since 3, 6, and 9 are considered significant numbers in various mystical or esoteric traditions, this pattern is presented as proof of some deeper, hidden order.
Okay, but here's where I get stuck. How does a number pattern translate into a physical effect like DNA repair?
And that, right there, is the fundamental conceptual problem. It's a huge leap. The derivation method is numerology, symbolic, mystical interpretation. But the claimed effects are described using terms from physics and biology: vibrations, resonance, DNA repair. For that to work, a cell or a strand of DNA would somehow have to read the numerical value of the frequency hitting at like 528, then calculate its digital root, which is 6, and then trigger a biological action based on that abstract math property. There's no known scientific principle for that at all. A cell responds to the physical energy of the sound wave, its actual frequency, its loudness, how long it lasts, not the symbolic meaning of the number we use to measure it. It's conflating two totally different things.
Okay, so the cell isn't doing numerology on itself. That makes sense. That's a critical distinction. So we've kind of picked apart the modern origin, but what about that ancient legend part? The Gregorian chants, Benedictine monks, Guido d'Arezzo, is there any connection there?
Right, that's the other layer to unpack. And it's where the story gets, well, significantly twisted. Guido d'Arezzo is real, yes. An 11th century monk, a brilliant music theorist. He did create a system called solmization, or solfege. He used syllables from a hymn, ut quant laxus, ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la, to teach singers the relative pitch relationships between notes. It was a genius mnemonic device for learning melodies. But critically, his system was about intervals, the distance between notes, the structure of a melody. It was absolutely not about assigning precise, fixed frequencies measured in hertz to each syllable.
Why not? Couldn't they have had specific frequencies back then?
Well, there are several big historical roadblocks to that idea. First, the Hertz unit itself is an anachronism. It measures cycles per second. It wasn't defined and adopted until the 20th century. Ancient or medieval cultures just didn't have the technology, tuning forks calibrated to specific frequencies, oscilloscopes, to measure or reproduce sound with that kind of precision. Second, and this is huge, there was no standardized pitch. Before the 19th, really the 20th century, the pitch orchestras or choirs, tuned to, varied wildly. An A note could be 409 Hz in one town, 455 Hz in another, sometimes even different within the same city. So the idea of ancient monks chanting in precisely 528 Hz is historically just untenable.
So ut nor mi didn't correspond to a specific number like 396 or 528.
No. It was about the relationship between ut and re, or mi and phi, not their absolute pitch. Which brings us to the third point. It's a conflation of two completely separate things. You have the modern solfeggio frequencies, invented in the 1970s via numerology by Puleo, and you have the historical solfege system, invented in the 11th century for teaching relative pitch by d'Arezzo. Proponents have essentially taken the name and the ancient vibe of the second and slapped it onto the first to give it historical weight it doesn't actually possess.
So it's less a rediscovery and more a rebranding, using the ancient wisdom angle.
That's a good way to put it. It's an incredibly effective psychological and marketing strategy. An idea born from 1970s biblical numerology just doesn't have the same ring as lost ancient healing sounds. Linking it, even inaccurately, to Gregorian chants and this revered historical figure creates a mythology. It makes a modern invention feel like a sacred artifact. It appeals to that desire we have for authentic, time-tested practices, and honestly, it often helps it bypass critical thinking. It lends this air of legitimacy that just isn't backed up by the actual history.
It really shows how powerful a good story can be. Okay, so the history is shaky. Let's turn to the science they claim is involved. How are these tones supposed to work? You mentioned a couple of proposed mechanisms. Do they hold up any better?
Well, the first one we touched on is maybe the most dramatic. Cellular resonance and DNA repair. The basic idea pitched is that everything, our cells included, has an optimal frequency. Disease happens when we're out of tune. So listening to the correct frequency, especially that 528 hertz tone, supposedly brings cells back into harmony, back into resonance, and can even physically repair damaged DNA.
Okay, resonance is a real physical thing, right? Like a glass shattering from a specific note.
Resonance is real, absolutely. And sound waves are physical vibrations. We use focused ultrasound, which is essentially very powerful sound, in medicine for things like lithotripsy, literally using sound energy to break up kidney stones. That's a direct, forceful effect. But the claim about solfeggio frequencies repairing DNA, that's where it breaks down biologically. And DNA repair is this incredibly complex, enzyme-driven process inside the cell. Think microscopic repair crews fixing incredibly detailed machinery. There's just no known scientific pathway for how a low-energy audible sound wave from outside the body could selectively find damaged DNA strands and then perform these highly specific biochemical repairs. The energy involved, the targeting required.
Right.
It's just orders of magnitude beyond what a simple tone can do.
Okay, so the DNA repair claim seems biologically implausible. What was the second mechanism?
The second one borrows from a real phenomenon, brainwave entrainment. This is where your brain's electrical activity, your brainwaves, can actually synchronize to the rhythm of something external, like flickering lights, or, importantly here, pulsing sounds. This is the principle behind things like binaural beats.
Right, where you have slightly different frequencies in each ear.
Exactly. And the brain perceives a third phantom beat. And the idea is the brainwaves might sync to that beat. Or isochronic tones, which are just a single tone flicked on and off rapidly to create a very clear pulse.
So does that apply to solfeggio frequencies?
Well, that's the critical flaw in applying it here. Solfeggio frequencies are typically presented and listened to as continuous single tones. They don't have that rhythmic pulse. A steady drone, essentially, lacks the distinct beat or rhythm that the brain needs to latch onto for entrainment to occur in the way it's proposed for binaural or isochronic tones. So again, we see this pattern, using a legitimate scientific term, entrainment, but applying it in a context where the necessary conditions aren't met. It sounds scientific, but the mechanism doesn't fit the stimulus.
So the proposed mechanisms, resonance for DNA repair, entrainment for continuous tones, they don't really seem to hold water scientifically.
Right.
What about actual studies then? Has anyone put these specific solfeggio frequencies to the test in a lab?
Okay, when you look for direct, high-quality research specifically on pure solfeggio tones and their claimed effects, the evidence is, well, it's extremely thin. Very few studies exist, and they're often preliminary or have significant limitations. For 528 hertz, for example, there was a Japanese study in 2018. It found that listening to music tuned to 528 hertz, not the pure tone, reduced stress hormones compared to standard tuning. Another study, this one on rats, suggested 528 hertz exposure increased testosterone and reduced anxiety. And a more recent one, 2023 on zebrafish, showed that solfeggio frequency music exposure seemed to reverse some stress-induced deficits. For 432 hertz, which isn't technically one of the core solfeggio set but often gets lumped in, an Italian pilot study in 2019 found that music tuned to 432 hertz compared to standard 440 hertz tuning was linked to a small but statistically significant decrease in heart rate.
Okay, but I'm hearing a common thread there. You keep saying music tuned too.
Yes, and that is the crucial methodological loophole. It's a really big one. Almost all these studies used music with melodies, harmonies, rhythms, tempo that has simply been tuned so that, say, the A note corresponds to 432 hertz instead of the standard 440 hertz, or the piece is based around 528 hertz. We already know from decades of research in music therapy that musical elements themselves, the melody, the rhythm, the tempo, the harmony, even the instrumentation, have profound effects on mood, physiology, heart rate, stress hormones. So if you find that relaxing music tuned to 528 hertz is relaxing, you can't logically conclude it was the tuning frequency that caused the effect. It's much, much more likely that the relaxing nature of the music itself was responsible. These studies don't isolate the frequency as the variable.
That makes perfect sense. You're comparing relaxing music A to relaxing music B, not isolating the effect of just the 528 hertz tone itself. But what about sound therapy more broadly? We know sound can have effects, right? Like those singing bowls or low-frequency vibrations.
Absolutely, and that's an important distinction. There is solid evidence for therapeutic effects from other types of sound and vibration, things like low-frequency sound stimulation, LFSS, that often uses direct physical vibration, maybe around 40 hertz applied to the body. It's shown benefits for pain, sleep problems, even mobility issues in some cases. And singing bowls, which produce these really complex sounds with lots of overtones and harmonics, have studies showing positive effects on anxiety, depression, blood pressure. But, and this is key, these work through different mechanisms. LFSS is often about direct mechanical stimulation of tissues. Singing bowls offer a rich, complex harmonic experience. Neither of these relies on the idea of a single pure tone having specific magical properties like DNA repair. So, yes, sound can heal or soothe, but the evidence for those other modalities doesn't automatically validate the very specific, extraordinary claims made for the solfeggio frequencies themselves.
Okay, so if the history is mythology, the proposed mechanisms don't hold up, and the direct scientific evidence for the pure tones is basically non-existent or flawed, then why? Why do so many people report feeling better? Millions are listening, many swear by them. What's actually going on there?
And that really brings us to the most plausible scientific explanation for the positive experiences people report,
Mm-hmm.
the placebo effect. And it's crucial to understand the placebo effect isn't about something being fake or just in your head in a dismissive way. It's a genuine, documented neurobiological phenomenon. When you truly believe a treatment will help you, that expectation, that belief, can actually trigger your brain to release its own endogenous opioids, endorphins, and neurotransmitters like dopamine. These can genuinely reduce your perception of pain, improve your mood, lower stress. Your brain's internal pharmacy gets activated by belief.
So the belief itself creates a real physiological change.
Yes. And the whole solfeggio frequency ecosystem seems almost perfectly designed to elicit a strong placebo response. Think about it. You've got the compelling mythology of lost ancient wisdom. You have scientific-sounding language, resonance, frequency, DNA. You have the ritual of listening, often in a meditative context. All these elements work together to build powerful expectation and belief. And when that belief is strong, the potential for a placebo-mediated positive experience is also very strong. So the sounds are real, the relaxing context is real, but the purported specific magical powers, those are most likely generated by the remarkable power of your own mind responding to that belief.
That's really fascinating, the power of belief interacting with the sound itself. But I can hear some listeners thinking, okay, but if I feel better, does it really matter why? If it works, right? How do you respond to that?
That's a really fair and common perspective. And look, if listening to these sounds helps someone relax, de-stress, feel calmer, that subjective experience is absolutely valid. It is real for them. The issue, or the potential downside, comes in a few areas. One is attributing the effect to the wrong cause, believing it's the magical frequency doing DNA repair when it's actually the relaxation response plus placebo. This can sometimes lead people, unfortunately, to prioritize these sounds over evidence-based medical treatments for serious conditions, or to spend significant money on apps or tracks based on claims that aren't supported. Understanding the placebo effect isn't about dismissing the positive feeling. It's about having an accurate understanding of why it's likely happening. It empowers you to recognize the power of your own mind without necessarily buying into the pseudoscience.
That's a really important distinction. Okay, so to help clarify things further, let's compare solfeggio frequencies directly with some other sound-based things people might encounter, like binaural beats or isochronic tones. They often get lumped together, but they're quite different, aren't they?
They are very different, and understanding those differences is key. It helps see where a solfeggio frequencies stand. Okay, so first, solfeggio frequencies, as we've established. They're presented as continuous, single-frequency pure tones. The proposed mechanism is this idea of vibrational resonance tuning your cells, or energy centers, which, as we've discussed, is largely unsubstantiated scientifically and historically. You don't need headphones. And their scientific standing, very weak. Claims aren't backed by history or plausible biology. The few studies usually test music tuned to them, not the pure tones.
Okay, so that's solfeggio. What about binaural beats?
Right, binaural beats. These work differently. You get two slightly different frequencies, one sent to each ear through headphones. Your brain then perceives a third frequency, a phantom beat, which is the difference between the two. The proposed mechanism here is brainwave entrainment, the idea that your brainwaves might synchronize to the rhythm of that phantom beat. Headphones are required for this effect, scientifically. The evidence is mixed, but it's growing. There are studies suggesting potential benefits for anxiety, focus, maybe even pain, although the exact mechanism of entrainment is still debated by neuroscientists. It's an active area of research.
Got it. Different stimulus, different mechanism, headphones needed. And isochronic tones.
Isochronic tones. These are simpler in a way. It's a single tone, but it's turned on and off rapidly and rhythmically, creating a very distinct, sharp pulse. The proposed mechanism is also brainwave entrainment, the brain syncing to that clear, repetitive pulse. Headphones are not required, as the pulse is in the sound itself. Scientifically, there's probably less research than on binaural beats, but some studies exist suggesting possible anxiety reduction. Some researchers think the clearer pulse might actually be a stronger stimulus for entrainment than the phantom beat of binaurals.
So putting them side by side really highlights the difference.
Exactly. Solfeggio frequencies kind of stand apart. Binaural beats and isochronic tones are both designed around a known scientific principle, using rhythm to potentially influence brainwaves, even if the extent and applications are still being researched. The Solfeggio system, however, is fundamentally based on this belief in inherent, almost mystical properties of specific continuous tones derived from numerology, lacking both historical validation and a plausible scientific mechanism like entrainment. If people find solfeggio music relaxing, again, it's far more likely due to the standard principles of music therapy, melody, harmony, rhythm, tempo, things we know affect mood, not the specific tuning number itself.
Wow, okay. This has really been a comprehensive deep dive, hasn't it? We've covered the huge popularity, the really big promises, and then dug into the actual history or lack thereof in the science.
Yeah, and to sort of boil it down, the key takeaway is that the popular narrative, these ancient sacred healing tones, rediscovered via biblical numerology, it's essentially a modern myth constructed in the late 20th century. Those extraordinary claims, 528 hertz repairing DNA, 396 hertz dissolving guilt, 741 hertz detoxing cells, they just don't have credible scientific evidence or solid historical grounding. And the ways they're supposed to work either biologically don't make sense or they misapply real scientific concepts like resonance or entrainment.
So the paradox, why do they feel good to some people if the claims aren't true?
That seems best explained by combining the natural inherent relaxing properties that simple ambient sounds can have with the very real, very potent power of the placebo effect, which is amplified by the whole mythology and ritual surrounding these frequencies.
Okay, so for you listening, if you're curious or you've tried these sounds, what are some practical takeaways? How should you approach them? Well, first, maybe listen critically, but also subjectively. If you find a particular track relaxing or good for meditation, great. Enjoy that feeling. Approach it like ambient music, not like taking medicine. Your personal experience of calm is totally valid. You just don't need to buy into the extraordinary claims to enjoy the sound. Second, manage your expectations. Don't go in expecting DNA repair or cures for diseases. Think of it more as a tool for general wellness, maybe creating a calm background for focus, meditation, or winding down before sleep. Keep it realistic. Third, and this is really important, prioritize evidence-based therapies. If you have a genuine health condition, please rely on treatments recommended by qualified medical professionals. Sound can be a lovely complement, but it is absolutely not a replacement for proven medicine. Fourth, maybe explore the broader field if sound interests you. Check out things like binaural beats for focus or guided meditations that use singing bowls. These often have a bit more research behind them, though still approach them with a critical mindset. And finally, maybe the biggest one. Recognize the power of your own mind. Acknowledge that your belief, your intention, the setting it all plays a huge role in your experience. Understanding how the placebo effect works isn't cynical. It actually allows you to consciously harness your mind's incredible ability to influence your well-being without needing to rely on pseudoscience.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, exploring sound for well-being can be a really positive journey. It just helps immensely if you navigate it with both an open mind to your own experience and a firm grounding in scientific reality and critical thinking.
So, after digging through all this history, the claims, the science, what stands out most to you from this deep dive into solfeggio frequencies? What's the lingering thought?